Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Let's do some pod crashing. Episode number 224 is with Ben Austen and Khali Gibran Muhammed from the podcast Some of My Best Friends Are.
Hey, Arrow.
Hey, we are happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm happy about. Just listening to your podcast. I mean, you're into another season of this. And I mean, it feels good to hear real friends with real laughter. And it's like, I think that's what's missing from a lot of today's society.
That's beautiful to hear. Thank you. Yeah, the idea that people will just enjoy spending some time hearing us connect and chop it up a little bit, no matter what the issue is. I mean, that's exactly the point.
And you know what's really interesting about this podcast is that you guys come into it as complete naturals. And because a lot of people, when they get that podcast, they've got to sound like disc jockeys and blah, 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 blah. But you guys are just, it's just it's filled with flow.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, back in the day, I used to be a wannabe. No, I'm joking. I was the guy listening to Phil Collins and Ben. So, we both have engaged the public in our careers. Ben is a writer and a journalist. I am a professor. I get to talk to students all the time. So, yeah, we do get to flow.
Coming from South Chicago, my wife is from Berwyn. So, I mean, I hear those Chicago stories all the time.
Yeah, on Son of Svengoolie, then they'd have to do that thing where they go, Berwyn. You can put in that sound effect later.
to come up with the concept of this podcast, because, I mean, you really do hit some real issues, but the thing is that you make it a conversation and not necessarily like you're going to thrust it down my throat like a Southern preacher.
Yeah, that's right. And go ahead. I was just going to say that's... This is why we have editors. Go ahead. You're the white guy. You get to go first.
No, now you have to go first. Now I have to be like, no, sir, you.
So that's the whole point. I mean, look, we are as serious as they come. I mean, Ben has been a professional journalist for over 20 years. He's written for the New York Times Magazine. He's just finished publishing his second book. I have published academic research. I have run cultural institutions. We know what it means to be serious and professional and to be, very sophisticated in engaging sophisticated audiences. But we also know that a lot of people are not interested in those conversations. Mm-hmm. They are up to a point. And so for us, we're going to be as personal and professional and playful as possible. We want to define the balance between all three of those modes of engagement, because look, if we can't figure out how to get people to pay attention to the things that we're talking about, we're never going to make it.
So, Ben, do you feel like that we're eavesdropping when we step into your podcast? Because, I mean, you guys really do. I mean, it's like you're sitting at the table next to me at Starbucks.
Yeah, I was in a coffee shop not that long ago, and I was listening to a couple who were on a date, and it was so painful to sort of relive that, of hearing them like go over, all the way of like how you try to get to know one another. I could hear them like Xing boxes and being like, nah. I think talking about race is so fraught for so many people. And it makes people uncomfortable. They're defensive, or they're angry, or they're worried about what's not being said. And for us, we're like, we're past that. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Race is this defining issue of our country. And even for all the people who say it's not, by even them saying it's not, they're proving that it is. They're spending all this energy saying like, well, no, we're not going to talk about race. They're actually showing that is defining of this country. And race and sort of all the sense of differences, that we're supposed to have this multicultural democracy. It's supposed to be this great ideal. And it's also absurd the way it sort of captures all of us. I mean, there is this humor in it at the same time that it's tragic. Right. And you got to explore all of that. I mean, it's why it's comic. I mean, as we're talking about it, we're laughing at things that we're also crying about. And that's actually how we talk to one another, and how we've been talking to one another for decades.
Well, and you guys hit real issues in the way that this isn't just a black and white interracial thing. You also include, Jewish as well, because, I mean, look at the podcast that you did with Mr. Penn.
Yeah, with Sasha Penn, that's right. I mean, so, talking about Jewish identity, talking about Asian identity. We have an episode that dropped today about Latino, Latinx identity. That we have to expand it also beyond our horizons. We get to have these amazing people on the show, and we get to talk and learn from them as well.
Well, I've made the mistake as a mobile entertainer to when I would go in and I would set up for a wedding, I would put on Latin music. And then a gentleman came up to me and said, no, I escaped my country. I want to hear American music. And I went, oh, my God. I thought I didn't want to offend anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, that's one of those absurdities, right? I mean, how could you know that because people are so diverse in their own identity, that it would be impossible to know what that person wanted. But I think, Arrow, you probably made the right mistake, meaning you went into it with the right heart, the right spirit.
Wow. So now, Khalil, let's talk about, because you're with students, you are a history teacher. How do you open up today's minds in the way of saying, okay, this did take place, but we've got to make sure that it does not repeat?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The first thing I get to do is to show them the evidence that exists within the scholarship. And so I take it out of the realm of popular culture where everyone has an opinion. We live in an open society, but Kanye shouldn't be teaching American history. And so that's number one. And of course, social media is an accelerant for the misinformation that exists about how people should learn about the past or what they should know. So my job is to give them the authoritative account of the past, which, sometimes is debatable. Interpretations are not all unified, but the simple facts that America was born out of chattel slavery and indigenous theft of land is not controversial in any university context anywhere in this country and in most places in the world. And so if we just start there and students can get those facts straight, then we can build all sorts of common knowledge and a shared history that is better than the one that we have today.
How easy was it to talk about the comedy of Dave Chappelle? Because there's many times that, first of all, I love the way he writes, because he is an eye opener and he knows he's going to wake up our heart.
You're talking about Dave Chappelle?
Yep. Not you. Not talking about you. Talking about
I thought I was like, Ben, the way you write, you open up my heart. And I read your sentences. Like, you and I are going to be good friends. This is going to work out.
No. So yeah, that Dave Chappelle episode, we're both very proud of it. And it was one of the harder episodes because the controversy had already come and gone about halfway through our season. And we were trying to figure out a way, like, if we talk about Dave Chappelle, do we run the risk of getting canceled? Because, just the fact of the trans community being the center of the thing that Dave Chappelle got wrong also meant that because neither one of us is trans, are we going to step into something that we didn't see coming?
Right.
And so I'm not going to lie to you, Errol, that one was a tough one. But where we landed was we said, look, if we take his function and role as a social commentator seriously, that his responsibility as a comedian is to help us see things that are hard to see using the tool of comedy, then it was actually much easier to do because we realized you can't be you can't be the victim in your own jokes. You can only be the butt of your own jokes. And that's the cardinal sin that Dave Chappelle broke in that series on Netflix.
And it was also, Arrow, that, he basically, the name of our show is Some of My Best Friends Are, the sort of, trope of prejudice where you excuse yourself with saying, no, I'm not this because some of my best friends are. And that's exactly what Dave Chappelle did. Once we sort of saw that that's how he was playing it, like, no, I can't be transphobic because some of my best friends, and he describes this relationship he has. It's like, oh man, we got to unpack that because that's actually what our show's about. Like we are, this is exactly what we got to take head on.
Well, see, and whoever came up with the title of the podcast is brilliant in the way that it leaves the conversation open. Some of my best friends are librarians. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways that you can take this show. There's nothing's going to get in the way of it.
Yeah, no, that was
That's
me.
Right. That's right.
Brilliant. I came up with the title.
Oh, so you get all the credit,
huh? You know what? This is why our friendship has endured, because I have to know when to be magnanimous is more important than correcting him. So I'm just gonna let him have that one.
Both of you coming from South Chicago. You came up during the days of Michael Jordan. The two of you as friends now. We've entered this generation where there's a lot of young adults that don't know who Michael Jordan is anymore.
yeah, they suck. That's that's absurd. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Khalil.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, for us, I mean, Michael Jordan not only being legendary and defining our childhood, more than anything, we got more Popeyes free fried chicken because of Michael Jordan than most people will ever remember. And that is because whenever the Bulls were able to keep the opposing team from scoring 80 points, and they scored more than they had to score over 100, and the other team had to score less than 80. Then everybody in the entire Chicago stadium before it moved to the United Center got free Popeyes fried chicken.
Wow.
Man, those were the good old days.
we would go to lunch. We would go to lunch together. We went to high school together, so we would go to get some. Every day we would walk to lunch. Yeah.
Do you think that we're living in an age of invisibleness in the way that, you guys talk about the interracial relationships and yet, while listening to the podcast, I'm going, oh my God, Obama and Biden. I never even put a label on that. And I think sometimes that we don't need that label.
Yeah, you mean the episode we just dropped last week about the politics of interracial friendships with Obama and Biden being part of that history. It's an interesting point. I will admit, Errol, like you, I never thought about that as an interracial friendship, which is why we were so keen to have a guest on the show who's written a book about these relationships going all the way back to Thomas Jefferson having a connection to a Black almanac writer and one of the people who actually designed Washington, D.C., because we were both like, wait a minute, you can't really call Biden and Obama friends. And his point was like, well, we can because the symbolism of this relationship is very powerful in a country where most people just haven't had that experience.
I make that sound so much listening to the podcast in the way that my reaction usually is just like a it's like there aren't even any words I utter, but I don't say words. And so because you guys are bringing so much truth to it, but you're not making me feel guilty about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, these are things that you should feel good about listening to and grappling with rather than feeling blamed. Thinking about Biden and Obama and their beer summit still. I mean, so when they each had to give each other some kind of cachet, and it definitely was about race. They had to give each other the whatever political power the other's race had to do. And that's important to recognize.
How did you guys prepare for one of your episodes from last season with Eric Holder, the Attorney General? Because, that right there had to take some serious show prep, but at the same time, you had to keep it real.
Well, listen, I got the chance to know Eric Holder. The old thing that white people think all Black people know each other.
Right.
Well, that's true. We do all know each other. We all get together and strategize on how to take over the country. So
it's called Martha's Vineyard in August.
So in this case, I got to know the former Attorney General because of some mutual relationships. And funny story about Mr. Holder. I was in a meeting with a number of really social justice and civil rights activists. They were trying to figure out how to make sense of the 2016 election. And they were basically talking about political mobilization and all these things. And someone turned to Eric Holder and he said, hey, man, all these voter suppression laws, like how come you guys didn't fix this? Like when you were in power, you should have been on top of this. And he literally said, I'm just Lil Ricky from Harlem. Like, what was I supposed to do? I'm not the man. First of all, I thought it was hilarious. And second of all, I thought to myself, like, no, you really were the man, Eric.
You weren't Lil Ricky.
You weren't Lil Ricky anymore. But yeah, no, he's a very down to earth person with big shoes to fill and a responsibility to help us figure this out.
So we have a great connection. We have a great connection to the guy who was on the show last year, Sasha Penn, who was a writer. He and Eric Holder actually wrote a pilot for a TV show together about a Black Attorney General.
Oh, wow.
So we have this in there too. What
did you guys feel in your heart when you were with Sasha in the way that you had to put a disclaimer at the front of it saying this is the way he really does talk? Because being in radio and stuff like that, I don't use foul language in my shows, and I was like, okay, I never thought about that.
That's a wonderful part about having a friend like Sasha Penn. Like, he's just keeping it real. Yeah. And it's also the nice part about a podcast rather than radio that If there's cursing, there's cursing, and people can tune in, or they can try to not hear those parts.
Yeah, I had a conversation one time with Tommy Davidson, and it was so funny in the way that he just couldn't stop. And then in my studio at iHeart, I collected Muppets from all these different places where toys were being dumped, and so he went over and grabbed Miss Piggy, and he held on to Miss Piggy the entire time. I love it when these people of comedy and acting and stuff are real people in person.
Yeah, I think you have to say Tommy Davidson of Booty Call fame. Like you have to say his name, and then everything a little Homeric.
or In Living Color, which was an amazing TV show that was part of our childhood.
So how does each episode develop? Are you guys like on a smartphone, or what? Because it doesn't just fall into place, or does it?
No. When we're go ahead, Khalil.
Well, no, I was going to say, so we plan usually for a number of guests to appear in a season. And then like yourself, I'm sure you try to build around the subject matter expertise or the lived professional experience of that person. That is really how we derive the content. But we also are thinking about what are the big themes that really matter to us. And so that will help us narrow the list of folks that we want to have on our show. And, it's a pretty quick turnaround. It's a weekly show. So, we've got to figure out talent. We've got to book the talent. We've got to come up, if they've written a book, we've got to read the book. We've got a lot of work to do, but we have an amazing production team, 2 producers, an editor, fact checker. It's a really great platform.
Do those
we're both remote. We don't actually sit in the room together. Khalil is in New Jersey when he's recording. I'm in Chicago. And we're able to pull it off. We're able to. The trick is, I think, what you're doing in your show is that you got to get people not to feel like they're being interviewed and just answer, but to actually engage in conversation and to be part of sort of this vivacious, energetic dialogue.
Well, see, and that goes all the way back to the beginning when we were talking about how natural you guys sound and stuff like that. I use you guys as a tool. I listen to how you do your pausing. I listen to your pacing and things like that. I'm going, okay, if they can do it, I can do it as well. So I study your show while listening.
We're like the Michael Jordan of podcast.
Errol, no, that's.
I want to be like
really
Mike.
Appreciate that. We really appreciate that. Hey, I want to mention one of my favorite shows because I want your listeners to go check it out. So our very first episode is called Interracial Buddy Films, and it is our way of going back to one of the earliest movies that we remember as teenagers coming of age in 1980s. 1982, 48 Hours, featuring Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte, and then Lethal Weapon, which came out 5 years later, 1987, with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely hands down one of my favorite episodes because there's so much in those movies that hits you on the nose with race. But then the layers that are unpacked in those movies, people we miss them as kids. We see them now, but now if people go back and listen, they will be totally blown away.
Wow. I would challenge you guys into a future episode in grabbing, these little HD antennas and watching Antenna TV or Me TV and going back and watching the shows from the 50s and 60s. My God, they got away with stuff that just, I sit there and groan when I hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also this really interesting moment in the 70s where, if you watch Sanford and Son, and Red Fox,
the N-word,
he's just dropping the N-word on network television right and left. Wow. It's really like this sort of just opening up before what that means, and that's also just fascinating. Sort of to push race in your face in the way that he wanted to do.
Wow. Well, congratulations on this brand new season of the podcast. Some of my best friends are. I look forward to talking to you guys many more times in the future.
Rain, this was
Thanks so much for having us.
Arrow, this was a delight. This was really fantastic. Thank you.
Well, cool, because in 10 minutes you're going to say, who was that guy we talked to? I don't know. It was just someone we talked to.
No. Not based on this picture of you. With that microphone, I will never forget you, Arrow, that I'm looking at on my screen.
Well, you guys be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you. You too.
Appreciate it. Thank you.